Hey guys, I'm Three Forks Church of Christ, and back for another one of these video devotionals. And I thought in this one we will kind of preview a little bit what we're even going to look at this coming Sunday at Three Forks from Sunday morning. It's um, it's the season of Christmas. It's the holiday season. It's closing of the year. A lot of things on a lot of people's minds. Good things. Some stress, obviously, with the holidays and varying things that we're dealing with. But I also want to make mention that we've been doing a study on or a series on Sunday morning on relationships and bringing godly principles into our relationships, and those things kind of come together in what we're going to talk about this Sunday, as far as Jesus being the key to all of our relationships and our relationships specifically this Sunday and how we interact with the world. We are talking about an opportunity to change people's lives, to change people's hearts, to change people's way of life by living out an example of Christ. And, with the holiday and Christmas here and people talking about the birth of Christ, what I want to do is just kind of get into a little piece of the early life of Christ and think about just what he did as he came into this world before he started his earthly ministry, and make a couple of comments here that hopefully that'll be encouragement to you. Also, that will set us up if you're more interested in this topic. Of course, we would invite you to come join us this Sunday. But do that. Let's go ahead and pull up some scripture in front of us. And where I'm at is in the book of Luke, and we are in Luke chapter 2. And of course, the birth of Christ is recorded here, though the date is not. I know that's quite a bit of a debate, especially around this time of year when he was actually born. Pretty confident, probably wasn't well we traditionally celebrate it, but he came into the world. We know that story pretty well, and it's being rehearsed quite a bit this time of year. And then we know, probably most of us do, about Jesus' early days in the temple, where he interacts with some of the people there, and he has some extraordinary questions. There's also an instance there where he's left at the temple, and his parents don't realize it for a little while, and then they have to come back and find him. And of course, those famous words of Jesus that I have to be about my Father's business. What I want to do is go to the end of this chapter and look at how this kind of wraps up, and this kind of, wraps up the early part of Jesus' life. So after he makes that famous statement, they had come, verse 48, they saw him, they were amazed. His mother said to him, "Son, why have you done this to us? Look, your father and I have sought you anxiously." You remember they left. You can go back and read this, Luke chapter 2. They had left the temple worship, but Jesus stayed behind. They didn't realize it. They got panicky, and they started looking around for him in the caravan, didn't find him, came back to Jerusalem, and there he is in the temple. Verse 49, he said to them, "Why do you seek me? Did you not know that I must be about my Father's business?" But they did not understand the statement which he spoke to them. And that's a powerful statement, and kind of where we might leave off in this, but it's in the very next two verses that I want us to focus just for a minute here. In this verse 51, he says, "Then he went down with them and came to Nazareth and was subject to them. But his mother kept all these things in her heart. And Jesus increased in wisdom and stature and in favor with God and men." Now, I'm not going to profess here to know everything that's involved in that last statement, or how all that, him being God yet man, and him being able to mature and grow yet all knowing. I don't know how all that mixes up. I don't know that we have to understand that. We accept some things just in faith that God knows what he's doing, and he is in fact very purposeful in doing that. But there is something very powerful there, that Jesus, being this and righteous and holy, and the Son of God in the flesh, and he's growing up in a world that's not unlike ours. We sometimes think that our world is maybe exceptionally bad or immoral or deprecated. I don't know that if we're being fair to history, that that's necessarily true. The world has always been a pretty harsh place, and a pretty ungodly place at that. Maybe in our culture, in recent memory, it seems like it was much better, and it may have been. I'm not suggesting it's not, and that degrade is certainly noticeable to us. But in the world as a collective, as a whole, that's always been true. And yet he was born into this world. And he lived a life in which he was faithful to God in all things. And yet he was able to grow in stature, not just wisdom, but stature, and in favor with God and men. Now, how did he do that? We don't have all the pieces. All we have to do is kind of look at his life and consider backwards into what that might look like. But the truth is that, and the main point that I want us to see here is that, we sometimes think to build stature in the world, to build a, connect with the world, we have to become more like the world, but that's not true. If anybody was countercultural, if anybody was counter to the ways of the world, it was Jesus, and yet he managed to grow in faith, in stature and favor with not only God, but with man or men. And I think this is a good opportunity for us to remind ourselves of the same truth. I mean, it's not, we're not talking about, uh, we're not talking about simple things as far as, holidays we keep or don't keep, or worship services that we attend regularly. Those are part of it. We're talking about life. And that if we would just give ourselves to walking with Christ, we might be actually pleasantly surprised at the influence we might garner from that. Too often we just we feel like we have to compromise everything. Yet Jesus compromised nothing and grew in stature and favor. I want to encourage you and encourage me too to remember the example of Jesus here. And if you want to consider these thoughts just a little bit deeper, we're going to be talking about just this coming Sunday at 3/4. So I hope that you come and join us. But until next time, I hope that you have a blessed day, and hope that you just continue to dig into the scriptures. There's life to be found in Christ.